so many fantastic conversations happening, and I feel like the energy here is just really exciting and electric. So thank you so much for all of your engagement. It is my very great pleasure to introduce Jan Unwin, who is the Superintendent for Graduation and Transitions, yes? Yep. At the Ministry of Education and Advanced Education in British Columbia. So you've heard us talk about this already this week. The K-12 curriculum is undergoing a transformation to make it more personalized and career-focused so that students can be guaranteed to come out of our systems really set up for success in their future life and work. I listen to CBC radio faithfully, and, it's been really fun lately listening to the different school district representatives talk about, career education in kindergarten and different kinds of things that sound really kind of really kindergarten, but at the same time really exciting that we're starting to develop that mindset amongst students in the province about where might they go in the future. And I think a key to this has been Jan's leadership, who was seconded out to be into this role for 2 years. She's now staying for 5, and she's really so committed to ensuring that this is done right and done. We often talk about this with portfolios. They're great when done well, and I think the same is true of curriculum. And Jan is really committed to doing this well and has really been such a leader to all of us in the province, connecting us across sectors to really think about how we might improve the student experience. And so it's my great pleasure to welcome my friend and amazing colleague, Jan Unwin. Yeah.
Thank you, Tracy. So much for short and sweet. What if I suck? Anyway, it's not going to matter because I already know how great this audience is. I mean, if you really think about it, it's a beautiful sunny day, and it's a summer, and you're here to talk about portfolios. So I know I've already, with a group of very supportive, innovative, moving forward kinds of people. So before I start on that note, how many people are here sort of representing post-secondary in some way? And is anybody representing industry, business, employers? Okay. Anyone from K to 12? Okay. All right. Okay. Good. Okay. So this is excellent. This is great because all of those sort of partner groups that I just talked about have been part of where we are now in this province with taking on a small little thing called transforming education across the sector, K to 12. Nothing has been left untouched. I'm going to share a little bit with you because you'll notice up there it says Portfolios 2.0. And the reason is the ministry, in their infinite wisdom, about 20 years ago, went down the road of trying to do portfolios once before. And the colossal error and how it was implemented caused it to go the way of the dodo bird. So if anybody remembers that, your kids might have been involved. And so this time we've learned a lot. There's definitely more of an imperative to do things different, which sets a nice stage. But the last time, really what happened was the ministry said, "Thou shalt do portfolios." Here they are. Have a nice day. And then, of course, teachers responded accordingly. And then parents responded accordingly on behalf of the teachers. And then the politicians pressed the delete button. So we're not going to have that this time. We're building it. I'm going to spend a little bit of time today giving you the context of where it's going to fit. It had no place to fit last time. And I think that was part of the whole reason why it didn't catch on. So fast forward 20 years. And I think one of the things that I really like to start all sessions with, and then keeping in mind that this moral imperative that I'm just going to briefly talk about is not a K-12 phenomenon. And I know from those of you who I've met just in the last couple of days, the best part of this little adventure and this opportunity in my career that I've had to work cross-sector is there's one single common thread, regardless of how our systems and structures operate. Everyone in both sectors wants the learner to have their best life chance at success. And we're all in it for that reason, which gives us a really good starting point. My hope is that something like this portfolio piece provides a catalyst for us to continue to cross our sectors and look at our journey way more like a K to 16 adventure or a K to forever adventure, because after you, there's another big adventure for the rest of the student's life. So if we can think of it in that context, and I'm just going to share with you what we've started in K to 12, and I think the best news around that is it's been an incredible motivator for the two sectors to come together and talk. Some of it out of fear. And you'll understand why when you see what we've tried to do. And I hear this statement so many times, I heard it today. We're not going to be ready for this kind of learner. Okay, let's chat. So that's been a really good catalyst. Anyway, getting to the moral imperative, I think, is the place to start. How many of you have been in situations where people have their arms folded and they don't want to change, and this too shall pass, and I don't want to, right? People do not typically jump up and down, yippee, we get to change today. They don't. So we always try to at least share with them a few things that, okay, let's not then at our own peril. Because guess what's changing at an exponential rate? The world outside. So Brent, you're going to notice, where's Brent? He's gone some. You're going to notice a couple of this data pieces. Okay, because there's lots of us working on this. Of course, I've added some things. Just start thinking about this and then say, let's not change. Let's keep things in the same way. Or this. Or this. Scariest part of that little adventure? Right? Doesn't that sound really far away? Nuh-uh. So there's some urgency. Or this. If you think about what's really going on in the world, I was telling someone today that I actually have retroactive guilt over some of my teaching practices, because I always thought I had to know more than the kids, and when I didn't, I'd make things up. And I know if this was today, there'd be someone in the background going, I call bullshit. Right? So I'm just happy to have gone through as a teacher when I did. But the fact of the matter is, this is the real world that kids are coming from, right? I mean, these are phenomenal pieces of information when you really think about it. And this is an internet minute. A minute. Okay, so think about the impact on educating the learner, right? And then we have things coming out of the World Economic Forum that totally supports what it is we're trying to do. And at the end of the day, that's what we're all trying for. Students to come out of our jurisdictions, our areas of learning, and provide in a positive way to the economic development and contribute in a positive way to our world. So we're not making this up, is the bottom line. This is not a K to 12 adventure that somebody thought they'd do because they had too much time on their hands. There's a lot of information out there now that talks to us about the world as we once knew it is over. So what choice do we have but to seize that moral imperative? And if you just look at this one, that whole 65% of children entering primary school today will ultimately end up working in completely new job types that don't yet exist. So now we have to reimagine what we mean by career. And that's where I see a huge role for portfolio, and I'll talk to you about that in a second. We don't know what the future is going to bring, but we can sure see how fast it's changing. And the other piece I think we have to really recognize is that 90% of what we know about how the brain works, we've discovered in the last 10 years. So once we know what we know, can we continue to do what we did? All in good faith, right? We all did our best based on what we knew, but now we know more. So how can our systems and structures adapt and adjust to give this new kind of learner what they need to have success? And here's an interesting thing. These little kids here will be alive in the 22nd century. So it's not just way out there that we need to start getting on with things. It's right around the corner. And there are kids in our system right now in kindergarten who will be alive in the 22nd century. So I think we would all agree that our job in the K-12 system, and then fast forward 13 years ahead, that your job in the post-secondary system is to open doors for kids. Not to be systems that it's hard to open the door, or that the door doesn't lead to something productive or their best life chance, but definitely to give kids the tools that they will need to be successful in a completely different world than anything we have been through ourselves. So it's easy to say all that, okay? And so we did all the research and looked at all of the data, but what did we actually do in the K-12 sector to get ourselves set up for a nice conversation around that K-16 kind of learning journey? As you can imagine, we always start with policy, because in the ministry I've discovered it's all about the policy. But the best part, when you write policy, and it kind of has a vision kind of approach to it, it's beautiful. Because now every single thing you do, really, can you hang your hat on it? Can you say that what you're doing is really, in this context, preparing capable young people thriving in a rapidly changing world? If not, let's have a conversation. So I don't even mind policy in this context. Then when you flesh it out a little bit more, you have to say, well, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by student success? And these are the big rocks that we have determined. And again, these are not K-12, right? You need each of these pieces in order to really point to student success. Without one of them, you're not at your peak performance. And so this gets into policy. You go, yay, now we have something that we can hold things up to. And then how are you going to measure it? We have consistently, historically measured the wrong things if we're going to hold true to what we've said we just believed. So now we're not. Now we're going to measure how well all students, this is another piece that we all know what we mean by all students, regardless of their background or where they live in BC, we need to measure whether it's succeeding in life. So we have a crazy thing we do, and it's one measure, but we measure grad rates. And really that's a measure of, did they get out the door? Yeah, so really what we want to measure is what happened to them after that. And that's where our conversations and the world of work conversations come in. But at the end of the day, I think sort of the lofty goal that we're really trying to create, and the reason why we've put our whole entire education system on its ear, is because we need to create a climate of possibility. These students are coming into our systems with a lot of stuff coming at them that can really lead to loss of hope. So what can we do then in a system that provides kids this whole climate of anything is possible, you can do it? And a lot of it isn't in the old systems and structures and pedagogical practice that we've done historically, where you start to tell kids what they can't do very early on, versus let's do a strength-based kind of approach to this, so that they at least know that there's possibility for them, regardless of their backgrounds and where they come from, etc. The other thing we've had a tendency to do historically is focus on equality. And we need to shift our focus to equity. We need to personalize. Never before has it been so apparent that all kids are different. And when I say kids, I mean students, I mean learners, I mean the people who come before all of us. Never before have we seen such a difference. So what does that mean then when you talk about personalized? And it doesn't mean you give all kids the same. Because when you do that, as you can see there, the bike is too small for the big kid, too big for the small kid, and absolutely useless to the student in a wheelchair. So we have to start really personalizing and giving kids opportunities in an education that meets their needs, their personal needs. And I know there's been a lot of, when you say personalized education, we've had a lot of eyes rolling back in their heads and ears ringing on behalf of teachers, thinking that means an IEP for every student or an individualized education plan for every student. It doesn't. What it means is, and you'll see what we've done with the curriculum, is to allow kids to personalize the learning and allow them to represent their learning in different ways. So shift some of the assessment practices that actually don't align with the principles of learning If, for example, we know that kids learn in different ways and at different rates, can we really be assessing them all in the same day on the same way, etc.? Hence, think about portfolio and authentic evidence of learning as we talk through some of the things that we have done. And then as we look at our pedagogical practice, we've taken sort of these kinds of big ideas that came out of, some significant research. And if you haven't read The Achievement Gap, I'm sure you have, the Global Achievement Gap. These are the things. We've sort of landed on some core competencies that pare this down a little bit, but these are the things that internationally, worldwide, not a BC phenomenon. These are the kinds of things and skills that people are saying this next generation must have, or they won't have their best life chance at all. So, I'm not going to bore with you the details of what we did, but I think it's important to put the context of how we're hoping to see portfolios operate into the future. I want to share a little bit about what did it mean to transform curriculum. And it's every curriculum, every grade level, across the entire system. Currently, right now, we're in a K-9 implementation. So K-9, as we all know, easy peasy compared to 10 to 12. But one of the great things about doing something different in 10 to 12 is we have been having conversations with post-secondary, because we know if we just foist it upon people that there'll be resistance. Good, bad, or ugly, there will be resistance. And then we run the risk of it all going sideways and off the track. So these are the big ideas behind the curriculum. And basically, for those of you who have heard there is no content anymore, there is. But the driver is not a long list of things to cover, a long list of minutiae things to memorize. It's about uncovering curriculum with these kinds of things in the background. So there are guiding principles, right? And you can see that there's been a big focus on Aboriginal worldviews, and we had the Aboriginal community involved in the creation of the curriculum. And I might just say this, one of the best things I think that sets us apart from some of the other transformation agendas in the world is the Ministry of Education did not do the curriculum. This is not a Ministry of Education curriculum. This is by teachers for teachers. So the teachers created it all. Ministry provided a venue, and I think that is really important. That's kind of what it looks like. So in other words, all the curriculum is on one page. So Social Studies 11 used to be this huge binder with hundreds of learning outcomes. It's now based around a know, do, understand model that has big ideas, the understanding piece, what you need to know, because you still do. But instead of assessing what you know and focusing on what you know, it's did you really understand what you knew by what you've been able to do with it. So it's an application kind of approach to it versus just know this and have a nice day. The whole purpose around it is that the curriculum has lots of big ideas and lots of learning, but the representation of the learning can be personalized. I'll just give you an example. I taught Social Studies 11, and it was World War II. And you used to have to give kids all of these data facts about World War II. Memorize this, and here's your test. So if you think about, I'm jazzed about World War II because I'm the teacher and I love it and I'm going to teach it and I'm going to be excited, which right away is going to, by the way, allow kids to engage back. That's just door number one. If you're engaged, they'll be engaged. If you're passionate, so will they be. Anyway, the new curriculum, and I'm making this up, right? This is just completely fabricated to give the point about. What this would look like now might be, I'm going to teach world conflict through the lens of World War II. I'm going to teach it that way. But in the representing of the learning, students would be able to personalize what world conflict has some kind of meaning to them. So if you think about the Syrian refugees as an example, the stories that they'd be able to tell around the world conflict that is personalized to them and the learning in that classroom versus we're all going to learn this in this way at this time. So I'm really simplifying things that aren't quite as simple as it sounds, but I want to talk about the core competencies that underpin all the curriculum. And this is what we've landed on in this province, but you'll see these written as 21st century skills and all sorts of different names, transferable skills, all kinds of things. But in this province, we landed on these as the core competencies. And we try to get people thinking about these are the main things. So the content now is going to be the vehicle at which to get to these. These are the main skills that kids have to have, and you're going to use your content to get to there. And that's not all of the, core competencies that we'd like to have had, but we feel that we can almost fit any of those survival skills into one of these bundles. Sad news, the end of the day, it's really not the curriculum that's going to change anything. Not the curriculum, not what shows up on that document. What is going to change everything is how engaged kids become in the learning. And so what we've done with the transformed curriculum is given teachers lots of space and time. How many times have you heard teachers say, I can't talk about that because I have to cover this? So the hope is that there's space and time to seize the teachable moment and make the learning engaging. And we actually know how to engage people, learners. As a matter of fact, if I asked you right now, which I won't because we don't have time to do this, but if I were to ask you, name a time when you were so engaged in your learning you didn't want it to stop. Every single time, people talk about things like, I was building something, I was touching it, I was doing something. I often was collaborating. It had some context that made sense to me. It had purpose and relevance and meaning. And most of all, it's relationships. And it's either relationships with the thing I'm learning about or relationship with the adult who's teaching it to me. So when we get to the piece around how do portfolios fit in all of this, I want you to think about relationships. And then I want you to think about your own experience also through high school. And then you'll have your own context in post-secondary. At the end of the day, we keep throwing in research because there are still the skeptical people who think, why it's going pretty well for us. We're doing okay on the PISA scores. Why would we change things? So we always throw in some research. And this is one of my favorite researchers because he's one of those guys who does the analysis of all the research and then makes a Coles Notes version. So I can say, oh, look at all the research. But if you haven't read any of John Hattie's stuff, it's incredibly powerful. But at the end of the day, and this is not rocket science, if kids are engaged, they're more likely to be successful and they're more likely to achieve. So how and where does portfolio fit with all of this? And this is one of the things that excites me most about this organization and this very group that has come together, and I assume will come together going forward in various capacities. Because one of the things I think that the portfolio notion can do, especially if post-secondary starts to say, we believe in it. Because one of the things that killed us last time on the portfolio adventure was the kids couldn't see any purpose. It was a hoop I had to jump through. Versus, this is an important thing for me to have for my next adventure, well, whether it be post-secondary or whether it be the world of work. And so that's why we've engaged a lot of business and industry as well. But the piece in the system that was problematic was who's going to help the students build their portfolios. And if you think back, and I'm sure this is pervasive if you're Canadian or American, wherever you've come from, there's a likelihood that your high school adventure was set up in isolated blocks of time with bells that rang between in some capacity, and you stopped learning this thing and put that in your backpack and then went and started this thing. And so never was there and in some cases, I'm making a generalization here, but in most of our high school systems, there isn't that adult or that curriculum per se that allows kids to cross the curriculum. So what is it? So what we've done And we've created 8 credits of career curriculum, and I'm going to have you take out your old definition of career and try to put in something like this. Because it's no longer what do you want to be when you grow up that we can be asking kids, based on everything I just showed you in the world is changing part. But it can be, who do you want to be? What do you want to be like? How do you want to contribute to the world? What is out there for you? So that's a mindset shift. And so that's, when we say career, that's what we mean by career in this new context. Because even if kids happen to know what they want to be, they aren't going to likely be that, in some cases like we did, for the rest of their lives. So if you start thinking about it then, as a student's life story, where could we find a better place to have a coach and a mentor, or an adult who cares, help kids create their life story out of everything they're doing throughout their adventure? And where else could we have this be the key point? To tie all those other curricular areas together, to tie what it is we're really trying to have for kids, and that's giving them a sense of purpose. And you do that through helping them realize what their strengths are. From that, you can actually get to, what's your passion? What do you like to do, right? And then move that into, how does that connect to the opportunities that are out there in the world for you? And I'm not talking about if you're good at hammering a nail, you should be a carpenter. I'm talking about clusters of opportunities that fall into some place that matches your strengths and what you're good at. And if you land in that Venn diagram, in that sense of purpose, now your experience in education is going to be a much different world. I have to say, just as a high school principal, I was a high school principal for several years, when I used to shake the hands of the graduates who came across the stage, many of them cleaning up with awards and, success, success, success. Others, not as much success, but I made it my business to try to really know most of them in some capacity. And so I'd follow up and ask them, so tell me about your journey. You've been with us for 13 years. And most often, I would, just through the conversations, they were compliant learners that kind of went, well, I'm glad that kind of chapter's closed. Now I can get on to something that, right? And we need to do better. Our moral imperative is to give them something where they're weeping at the end. I'm exaggerating to make a point. Not because they're missing their friends, but because they've had such an incredible adventure and they have a sense of purpose and who they are and what they can do. And so my thing is, we need to start that building of that life story, helping them find their purpose, and we start it in kindergarten. So the career curriculum actually starts in kindergarten. Of course it does, if you think about career in the context that we just talked about, right? So now we've got this whole continuum. Now we have this career education that has not been even released yet, that is 8 credits to go through 10, 11, and 12. And I have to tell you, we are still just tinkering. We're still not there, and there's still tons more to do. But if you think about some of these things, that these are what are included in the learning standards of the career curriculum that spans the 3 grade levels that matter most to you folks in your adventure in post-secondary. Right? So if you think about this, exploration of multiple career life roles. So how do we get kids earlier on exploring and trying and figuring things out so they're not wishing and hoping that it's going to come to them what they're good at or what they like to do? Deeper learning, all of the experiential learning, involving the community. We have this notion that the learning happens inside our buildings between 8:30 and 4. When most kids, when you talk to them, have tons going on outside. Where does that come in and where does it count? And how do you bring the community in to help with the coaching and the mentoring? Where will kids be able to show they can self-reflect? And one of the things that I learned in my post-secondary adventure, we were meeting with registrars around portfolios, etc. But one of the things that struck me and this was somebody from UBC, and they were talking about, we can't find any evidence that kids have the ability to self-reflect. Even when they put it as one of the tiers for admission, tell us something that you've learned. Kids will often, or tell us something you're really proud of. They'll say, well, I was the captain of the basketball team, or I went to Africa to build a well. And they don't have that self-reflective ability. So how do we use portfolios and this career curriculum to give them a chance to have that skill that we know is going to be incredible in their success pathway? So really, portfolio is an essential tool of the career curriculum. Now, before everybody gets too excited and thinks I'm going to unveil the thing, not a hope. And the reason I'm saying that is because we've decided, and this has been great so far, because now the grassroots, the organic approach to this has, like, the horse is out of the gate, and now the ministry's running and chasing after it, which is the best place to be, right? It's the best place to be. Not having the ministry lead the parade, because that's often the kiss of death. So what you want to do is have them say, okay, how can we help then? Because everybody sees this as an essential tool. What can the ministry do to support that? So we're starting to see tons and tons of evidence of people documenting and sorting and bringing authentic evidence to start to create this profile of who am I and what can I do. Now, having said that, you also need the teacher. Someone who, you can't say, kids, here you go, create your profile, do your portfolio, hope it works for you. So we've done some things that are really, I'm hopeful about, around changing the role of teacher a little bit. But at the end of the day, and I hope this is the same for post-secondary, whatever we create as a portfolio or a profile of learning or a basket of authentic evidence of who I am and what I can do, we hope that it has use for them. So, and I'm not talking necessarily about the whole thing. Like registrars are going to have to start, brace yourself, going through all these portfolios when they have 20,000 applicants. They can't. But we can start to reimagine what are a couple of questions you can ask where the student goes into their portfolio and pulls something poignant out that demonstrates, I would be good at this. You should take me into that engineering program. Because look at that spaghetti bridge I built that I stood a teacher on, never broke, right? So my point is that I think we just have to shift our thinking and not get bogged down in the, well, how would we do it? We'll figure it out. Is it right? Is the first question I think we need to ask. Bottom line though, we know that a dynamic portfolio that has lots about me in it is a true curriculum vitae and has much more information about me than a flat piece of paper with letters and numbers on it. Now, before anybody tweets that the province of British Columbia has removed flat pieces of paper with letters and numbers on it, no, because the world is not ready for no dogwoods or transcripts, and I'm not suggesting that. This is a value added. Okay, so they still have their dogwood with their GPA, which is a story for another day, and then they have ideally some kind of authentic evidence of learning. So I'm going to show you something that'll probably, it's a bit busy, I admit, and some of you have seen this before, but I keep coming back to it because what we've discovered is we have to give somebody a framework, because we've got people out of the gate with portfolios all over the place, but they're shoeboxes of stuff that have no sort of sense around it. And we haven't released anything yet because, again, we don't want to tell people necessarily because we don't want to lose things. So I'm just going to show you this as an idea, as a pretend. And again, yesterday we had this think tank. Was that yesterday? Yesterday. Oh my God. Was it Monday? Monday there was a think tank with some people in this room there. And one of the things we talked about, we don't know what any of this should be. We don't know what any of those things along the side should be, any of the baskets, or people can frame their bunches of learning around. We don't know. But imagine if industry and business and post-secondary and K-12 got together and said, look, Here's what we do know. We know, this doesn't have a little pointy thing, we know that those core competencies are going to be important. So some of those things have to be authentic evidence that support that. We know that there is going to be probably some common things that you want all kids to be able to demonstrate in their portfolio. And we also know we want kids to be able to show the personalized side. What am I good at? What's my thing that I want everybody to know about me? And we also need a place where learning that happens outside of school can count and be valued. So this is just something we threw together as to try to get people's head wrapped around. Imagine if behind each one of these there was some kind of representation of learning. In this case, a piece of writing. Same student now is going to use a piece of art. So you see what's happening is they're representing their learning in different ways, and they're pulling it together into a picture. You can also see that the teacher comments. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the role of teacher. If we're going to get this right, teachers are going to have to brace themselves a little bit for a different role. But you can see that this person is starting to create a picture of who they are and what they can do. Again, what are they passionate about? It's coming through. And then at the end of the whole 8 credits, there's going to be a capstone project. And I'll show you a little bit about what our thinking is around that. But I'm thinking that in post-secondary, the capstone could be something, because it's not everything, but it could be one thing that could add value to who that student is upon entrance. We haven't figured out the how, but I think the capstone might be a good place. And this is just if you happen to have other things you want to put in that you've done and that you're proud of. So click a clickable device. The capstone would be also in that portfolio. You'd click on it and you'd start to see what that capstone could be. So an opportunity for some self-assessment and critical analysis. They're reflecting on their experiences in and out of school, assessing their development in the core competencies, and share highlights of their learning journey. We don't have that strategically and by design in our system right now. And we're feeling like that's something that's really missing. And then to be able to represent and or present it, and again, getting back to personalizing. It can't be they all go into the gym and sit across a table from the police chief. It has to be, I've developed an app and my bank account has millions of dollars in it, and I'd like to talk about how that happened in my journey through the schools, and I'm going to do it on a YouTube clip. I'm making all this up, but the point to keep in mind is your capstone can't be the same for all kids either. It's personalized and it's theirs. So if you can think about as a post-secondary institute, how could that come in some way, in some fashion? Keeping in mind, admissions is but a small part of what I hope happens with portfolio. I hope you guys who are all here believe in portfolio, and it becomes a seamless thing that kids build on through time. They come to you with it, and you just add on. Now they've got their whole life story after they leave you and go on to their place of work. So having said all of that, you can see that there's going to be a need for some sort of mentoring role in the system on purpose. Right now we have some kids who connect with some teachers, but there's way too much research that shows if you have one adult that you connect to, your success trajectory goes through the roof. If you have 2, you're laughing. Way too many of our kids coming out of our system have none. And when you watch the kids cross the stage, so many of them are unknown to anybody. And we can't. It's our moral imperative to make that not so. So I'm seeing this opportunity. Imagine having that as your career. That's the job I get to show up to every day. I'm going to coach and mentor a cohort of kids through their graduation learning years and help them build themselves a profile of who they are and what they can do. And I'm going to do some of these kinds of things that are in those little building blocks, which you can see really connects to their preferred future, right? Really could connect to where they go next. Really could give some information around what they're good at. And so that role, and you can imagine that is not something everybody's putting their hand up saying, I want to be that. But there are teachers, and if I asked you right now, you know who they are, they were there for you. But imagine if we did it systemically, on purpose and by design, hooking kids up with coaches and mentors in high school that work them through these kinds of things in their development. So I think we all can understand, if you think about all the things I showed you in the very beginning, that our roles in both sectors are going to change to some degree. You know, kids are now, they're selecting their adventure. And it's going to become more and more. You know, they're getting their degrees with little bits of degrees from all sorts of post-secondaries. They're getting a little bit from Harvard and a little bit from here, in their pajamas, if they want to. So I think we all believe if we can connect and engage, and that the portfolio could be the catalyst for that, because now I can coach and mentor them and give them something valuable for their next adventure. I think we could all say, that's our ticket. That's our ticket for getting education right in this new kind of world. So just to end then, I always come back to, why are we doing this again, right? And in our world, in this province, we have legislation that says this is what a BC educated citizen. It's in legislation. P.S., it's been in legislation since 1989. P.S.S., we haven't had a flipping clue whether anybody's been that, because we're not measuring that. But if you think about the core competencies and where we're trying to go, we should be able to stand strong. We looked at this and thought we should modernize it. Not so much. We still want that. So it's just a matter of, okay, but let's strategically aim to have that. More things we're not making up, right? So if we know this, and this keeps shifting around, right? The order in which they're deemed important shifts around. But at the end of the day, most of those things keep getting told to us over and over and over again. So if we know that, what is a way that our student is going to be able to actually demonstrate authentically that they can do that? Portfolios are our only hope. And one last, to what end? We built our system over there on the left for a completely different world. We need to get over here and create knowledgeable, adaptable people who can work with others to innovate in a new economy. And in order to do that, our students need to get shifting along that line. And our teachers need to get shifting along that line. And we'll be every possible point along that line. We know that. But you need to shoot for something. And I think at the end of the day, nothing is more important than fact, not fancy. We are handing over our world to this next generation. And we want to prepare them. And there are great kids. And we want to see all of them. And so what can we do strategically to help kids get their bundle of experience and their bundle of evidence and authentic knowledge and engagement in a personalized way to send them on their journey with the trajectory for success? We're missing too many of them at this point, so it's a perfect opportunity, in my opinion, which is why I'm still here after 5. I think this is our best chance we've ever had, because the world is changing for us, and our job now is to prepare students. So I wanted to make sure that I left 10 minutes to just, I was just breezing through that. I feel like you were drinking from a fire hose, I'm sorry. But I just wanted to tell you a bunch of things and then let you ask me some questions.
Awesome initiative, thank you. So
Thank you for saying that.
Having done some government work myself over the years in my early days, awesome stuff. What's keeping you up and awake at night from going from where we are today to possible vision?
Well, there's a lot of things. Thanks for asking. I think the speed of which we have to get going, I know, is terrifying, and so I think it's almost a generational change we're looking at here, right? And so I think I'm worried about the kids sort of in the middle. And having said that, I think if we embrace pieces of this around the all kids can learn, and our job is to coach and mentor them into that, we're going to improve our system from a model that doesn't fit, no matter how big the step we take. So I think the length of time that this is just going to take, because change takes time, and the shifting of the mindset for the people who are inside the system now, who don't necessarily embrace all of this, I think is the things that I worry about. Having said that, we are working with our teacher education organizations as well to say, let's make sure the right kinds of people, we do the right kinds of things with them, and we mentor them up with the right kinds of folks, so that while this is going on, this is also going on. But I think what keeps me up at night is that we aren't doing it fast enough. Thanks for asking. Any other questions? Yes. And remember, it could be a comment, it could be like advice. We're open to all.
Hi there. It's really exciting, and I've been involved in Ontario curriculum and BC curriculum.
Great.
And I absolutely love the shift to active learning and all of the good things you're doing and all of that shift. One thing that made me really kind of put my ears up, though, was grade 1, they're having them thinking about job possibilities. And I thought, obviously you're not going to start talking to them about careers, but I have a daughter that teaches grade 1, and they're involved in all sorts of fabulous education things, very interactive. It's actually grade 1 in the Alberta curriculum, which is also doing good stuff.
Yep.
But my one worry with getting, as you said, it's careers, we don't know what they are, and I am somewhat worried about streaming of kids.
Absolutely.
If we start hearing them too young, where they're thinking about what are my possibilities. So one is streaming where they think, I can't ever be a doctor because I can't do this, or thinking, I can be a doctor, or whatever it is, mechanic or whatever, but they will never have those skills because of the diversity. So I know there's not an easy answer, but I think that's one of the challenges. I think sometimes we set up false expectations by saying, the world's your oyster, you can do whatever you want. But the reality is, there are limitations on what we can do, both on where we're born and on our capacities, and so it's very complex. So I just thought I'd pose that. I'm sure it's something you stay awake at night thinking about too, but I'd love to hear what you have to say about that.
One of the reasons I can sleep better is because we've redefined what we mean by career, and we actually shouldn't have even used the term, because the people continue to see career equals job, or career is an occupation. But if you think back to the definitions around, even a kindergarten student can start to, with a coach and a mentor, start to say, I like doing these things, or I want to be like this. So you think about the core competencies and the conversations around those that just build towards who am I, and what do I want to be like, versus what is that thing I want to be in as an occupation. So I don't think that we should be talking to kids about the job, and as far away from streaming as you could ever be, which is why we want exploration. Because some kids, you talk to them and they just don't know. Well, what happens when they at least get exposed to a variety of things? And what's wrong with that doctor also being able to wield or swing a hammer, and vice versa? So that's kind of the hope, is that you just expose them to all sorts of things, but really your profile isn't around the career you want. It's about, what do I like to do? What am I good at? And then you build on your profile as you get older. So those points are great.
You said about what kind of person do they want to be in building that community?
Yes.
And what is success? Like,
absolutely.
Success is different for
every student. Yeah.
That would be always a successful.
In your way, exactly, because success is different for every single individual. Great points. Thank you for that.
I'm going to just shout so that Tracy doesn't.
Go, Tracy. 2 at a time, Tracy.
So I'm
out myself and say there were all kinds of things, even as a college student, that I didn't like and didn't think I was good at. And I'm not sure that if I had been allowed to just do the things that I liked or was good at, that would have been a wise choice or good for me, good for my success. And writing, ironically, says the writing director, was one of those things I wasn't good at and didn't like to do. So how do you balance the things that students need with the things they think they're already good at?
So that's a great point, and the intent, and I just want to make sure that comes out clearly. The intent is, life is your oyster and all you have to do is what you love and all of that. That is not the intent at all, but it's to be exposed to all kinds of things. So at the end of the day, your profile, like for example, there are also basic things we all need to be able to do, and let's just use writing or communicating as one of those things. But I might not be a journalist. So so there's things I need to have in my basket, but as I'm creating my profile over time, I'm going to get more and more into a persona that matches me. That doesn't mean there's a lot of things and steps through that journey that I don't like, because I agree with you. There's a lot of learning that happens inside those things too, those things that are hard, those things that you don't like. But I think when you think about it in the context of a portfolio, you're still doing all of this, but you're going to start to pull some things into it that show a picture of you, right? So it never is intended to let's just all think, the world is, look through rose-colored glasses. It's around, can you self-reflect on your learning journey, including through those things that were really tough and really hard. So thanks for mentioning that. It's a good point.
We have time for one more question if anyone needs a comment. Maybe thanks, Angie.
I think it should be somebody way over there.
Thank you so much for this presentation and for the work that you're doing. I think it's really, really exciting. I have a question about how much your curriculum and the thought behind it has been informed by an anti-racist or anti-racism approach. Because I know what you're saying, like, give every child the opportunity to do what they want to do, but the reality is there's still so many barriers for people of color and people of different non-white or heterosexual, whatever normal you want to define that background. So has that been considered, and how will it be enacted?
One of the things that I'm really proud of around this in this province is the attention to those kinds of things. Now, having said that, there's a lot of worldly obstacles that still exist that we can't control. But in the development and in the creation, those kinds of things exactly that you just described were part of what pushed us into all kids can learn, all students are different. We have to recognize that, and we have to let them represent their learning in ways that make sense to them. So it's underpinning in those core competencies, and the social and emotional and the personal development side of the core competencies is where we really address some of those things overtly, for sure, because at the end of the day, those are the things that are going to make or break any of what we try to do. There's no question about that. So thanks for raising that, because I think that's a big thing in all of our adventures, and certainly one of the things that we hope we've addressed, because it was in the forefront right at the very beginning of this journey. And getting back to the written by teachers and created by teachers, they bring those very same questions to any kind of development. And I think if I were to say, just to leave you with this, there are two things that are getting BC sort of out there. And like somebody was mentioning Alberta and Ontario, we're all sort of adventuring down this same road, as is New Zealand, as are millions of places around the world. But one of the two things I think we did that has really put us on the world stage, and one is the co-creation of the curriculum. In other words, opportunities where it sat out there for anyone who wanted to give feedback on it. So any perspective could have been given and then pulled back in and adapted, and it's on an iterative process. That was point number one. And the last point is the work with post-secondary. So not springing things on them. So starting to have these conversations in every context imaginable so that we start to see ourselves as a K-16 adventure. So stay tuned. I have to tell you, you play a huge role in that wherever you are. As soon as we start to see ourselves as a learning journey for students, I think then we're giving them their best life chance. So thank you for all you do and what you're about to do still in your lives. And thanks for thinking about portfolio as one of the catalysts and one of the things that can tie ourselves together. So really appreciate being asked. Thank you so much. Thanks for all you're doing, and enjoy the rest of your day.
On behalf of AAEEBL, I just want to thank you again, Jan, so much for sharing your enthusiasm and your ideas for the curriculum and desire to really change the face of student learning, I think, throughout their learning careers, not just in the K-12 sector, and I think prompting us to think, reminding us to think about all these issues that are certainly tightly tied into the work that we do in higher education as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you, all of you.